Chapter 2. The first interview by Southwest was scheduled on January 31st, 1978. Dorothy Turner, a slight, motley psychologist with a shy, almost frightened expression, looked up when Sergeant Willis brought Milligan into the interview room. She saw a handsome 6-foot-tall young man in a blue jumpsuit. He had a full mustache and long sideburns, but his eyes held a childlike fear. He seemed surprised to see her, but by the time he sat in the chair opposite, he was smiling, hands folded in his lap. "Mr. Milligan," she said, "I'm Dorothy Turner from the Southwest Community Mental Health Center, and I'm here to ask you some questions. Where are you currently living?" He glanced around. "Here." "What is your social security number?" He frowned and thought about it for a long time, gazing at the floor, the yellow cinder-block walls, the tin bot can on the table. He nibbled on his fingernail and studied the cuticle. "Mr. Milligan," she said, "if I'm to help you, you'll have to cooperate. You have to answer my questions so I'll be able to understand what's going on. Now, what is your social security number?" He shrugged. "I don't know." She looked down at her notes and read off a number. He shook his head. "That's not my number. That must be Billy's." She glanced up sharply. "Well, aren't you Billy?" "No," he said, "not me." She frowned. "Wait a minute. If you're not Billy, who are you?" "I'm David." "Well, where's Billy?" "Billy's asleep." "Asleep? Where?" He pointed to his chest. "In here. He's asleep." Dorothy Turner sighed and braced herself, nodding patiently. "I have to talk to Billy." "Well, Arthur won't let you. Billy's asleep. Arthur won't wake him up, 'cause if he does, Billy'll kill himself." She studied the young man for a long time, not sure how to proceed. His voice, his expression as he spoke were childlike. "Now, wait a minute. I want you to explain this to me." "I can't. I made a mistake. I wasn't even supposed to tell." "Why not?" "I'll get into trouble with the others." There was panic in the young voice. "And your name is David?" He nodded. "Who are the others?" "I can't tell you." She tapped the table gently. "Well, David, you've got to tell me about these things so I can help you." "I can't," he said. "They'll get real mad at me, and they won't let me on the spot anymore." "Well, you've got to tell somebody, because you're very scared, aren't you?" "Yes," he said, tears forming in his eyes. "It's important for you to trust me, David. You've got to let me know what's going on so I can help." He thought about it long and hard, and finally he shrugged. "Well, I'll tell you on one condition. You gotta promise you won't never tell the secret to nobody in the whole world. Nobody. Never. Never. Never." "Yes," she said, "I promise." "In your whole life?" She nodded. "Say you promise." "I promise." "Okay," he said. "I'll tell you. I don't know everything. Only Arthur does. Like you said, I'm scared. Because a lot of times I don't know what's going on." "How old are you, David?" 8, going on 9. "And why are you the one who came to talk to me?" "I didn't even know I was coming on the spot. Somebody got hurt in the jail, and I came to take the pain." "Would you explain that?" "Arthur says I'm the keeper of the pain. When there's a hurt, I'm the one who takes the spot and feels it. That must be awful." Tears brimmed in his eyes as he nodded. "It's not fair. What's the spot, David?" "That's what Arthur calls it. He explained to us how it works when one of the people has to come out. It's a big white spotlight. Everybody stands around it, watching or sleeping in their beds, and whoever steps on the spot is out in the world. Arthur says whoever is on the spot holds the consciousness." "Who are the other people?" "There are a lot. I don't know them all. I know some of them now, but not everyone." "Oh, wow," he gasped. "What's the matter?" "I told you Arthur's name. Now for sure I'll get in trouble for telling the secret." "It's all right, David. I promised I wouldn't tell." He cringed in his chair. "I can't talk no more. I'm scared." "All right, David. That's enough for today. but I'll come back tomorrow and talk to you some more." Outside the Franklin County Jail, she stopped and pulled her coat tightly around her against the cold wind. She had come prepared to face down a young felon who might be feigning insanity to avoid prosecution, but she had never expected anything like this. The next day, Dorothy Turner noticed something different in Milligan's expression as he entered the interview room. He avoided her eyes and sat in the chair with his knees drawn up, playing with his shoes. She asked how he was feeling. He didn't respond at first, looking around, glancing at her from time to time with no sign of recognition. Then he shook his head, and when he spoke, it was as a boy with a Cockney accent. "Everything is loud," he said. All the sounds. Oh yeah, don't know what's going on." "Your voice seems funny, David. Is that an accent?" He peered up at her impishly. "I'm not David. I'm Christopher." "Well, where's David?" "David's been naughty." "What do you mean?" "Oh, the others are awful mad at him 'cause he told." "Will you explain that to me?" "Oh, you can't. Oh, you don't want to get into trouble, Loki David." "Well, why is he in trouble?" she asked, frowning. "'Cause he told." "Told what?" "You know, he told the secret." "Well then, will you tell me some things about yourself, Christopher? How old are you?"
13.
"And what do you like to do?"
"Oh, you play the drums a little, but I'm better on the harmonica."
"And where are you from?"
"England."
"Do you have any brothers or sisters?"
"Just Christine. She's 3 years old."
She watched his face closely as he spoke in his crisp Cockney accent. He was open, earnest, happy, so different from the person she had spoken to just the day before. Milligan had to be an incredibly good actor. On February 4th, her third visit, Dorothy Turner noticed that the young man who walked into the interview room had a different bearing than she had seen either of the other 2 times. He sat casually, slouched back in the chair, gazing at her arrogantly. "How are you today?" she asked, almost afraid of what he might answer. He shrugged.
"All right."
"Could you tell me how David and Christopher are doing?" He frowned and glared at her. "Hey, lady, I don't even know you." "Well, I've come here to help you. We have to talk about what's going on." "Shit, I don't even know what's going on." "Don't you remember talking to me the day before yesterday?" "Hell no, I ain't never seen you in my life." "Could you tell me your name?" "Tommy." "Tommy who?" "Just Tommy." "And your age?" 16. "And could you tell me a little bit about yourself?" "Lady, I don't talk to strangers, so leave me alone." For the next 15 minutes she tried to draw him out, but Tommy remained sullen. When she left the Franklin County Jail, Dorothy Turner stood on the front street for a while, dazed, thinking about Christopher and of her promise to David never to reveal his secret. Now she was torn between her promise and her realization that Milligan's attorneys had to be told about this. Later she phoned the public defender's office and asked for Judy Stevenson. "Look," she said when Stevenson got on the line, "I can't really talk with you about it right now, but if you haven't read the book, Sybil, get yourself a copy and read it." Judy Stevenson, surprised by the call from Turner, bought a paperback copy of Sybil that evening and began to read it. Once she understood where it was going, she lay back in bed and stared at the ceiling, thinking, "Oh, come on, a multiple personality? Is that what Turner was trying to tell her?" She tried to visualize the Milligan who had trembled so badly at the line-up. She thought of the other times he'd been talkative and manipulative, trading jokes, quick-witted. She'd always attributed his changed behavior to depression. And then she thought of the story Sergeant Willis told about the slippery character who could get out of any straitjacket, and Medic Russ Hill's comments about the superhuman strengths he showed at times. Milligan's words echoed in her mind. "I don't remember what they said I did. I don't know anything." She thought of waking her husband and talking to him about it, but she knew what Elle would say. She knew what anyone would say if she tried to tell them what she was thinking now. In more than 3 years in the public defender's office, she'd never come up against anyone like Milligan. She decided to say nothing to Gary yet, either. She had to check it out for herself. The next morning she called Dorothy Turner. "Look," she said, "the Milligan I've met and talked to for the past few weeks has acted strange at times. There have been changes of mood. He's temperamental, but I haven't seen the major differences that would lead me to conclude it's like the Sibyl's case." "This is something I've been struggling with for days," Turner said. "I promised not to tell anyone, and I've stuck to that. All I told you was to read that book, but I am going to try to get him to agree to let me tell you the secret." Reminding herself that this was a psychologist from Southwest, from the prosecutor's side, Judy said, "You take the lead. Let me know what you want me to do." When Dorothy Turner came back to see Milligan for the first time, she met the frightened little boy who had called himself David that first day. "I know I promised never to tell the secret," she said, "but I've got to tell Judy Stevenson." "No," he shouted, jumping to his feet. "You promised. Miss Judy won't like me anymore if you tell her." "She will like you. She's your lawyer and she needs to know so she can help you. You promised. If you break a promise, that's like a lie. You can't tell. I got into trouble. Arthur and Reagan are mad at me for letting the secret slip out, and—" "Who's Reagan?" "You made a promise, and promises are the most important things in the world. Don't you understand, David? If I don't tell Judy, she won't be able to save you. You might even go to jail for a long time. I don't care. You promised." But she saw his eyes glaze, and his mouth begin to move as if he were talking to himself. Then he sat erect, placed his fingertips together, and glared at her. "Madam, you have no right," he said in a crisp, upper-class British accent, his jaw barely moving, "to break your promise to the lad." "I don't believe we've met," she said, gripping the arms of the chair, trying desperately to hide her surprise. "He told you about me." "You're Arthur?" he acknowledged with a curt nod. She took a deep breath. "Now, Arthur, it's essential that I tell the attorneys what's going on." "No," he said. "They will not believe you. Why don't we see? I'll just bring Judy Stevenson over to meet you and— No. It might save you from prison. I've got to let—" He leaned forward and glared at her disdainfully. "I tell you this, Miss Turner. If you bring anyone along, the others will just remain silent, and you'll look like a fool." After 15 minutes of arguing with Arthur, she noticed the glazed look in his eyes. He leaned back in the chair. When he leaned forward, the voice was different, the expression casual and friendly. "You can't tell," he said. "You made a promise, and that's a sacred thing." "Who am I talking to now?" she whispered. "Alan. I'm the one who talks to Judy and Gary most of the time." "But they only know Billy Milligan." "We all answer to Billy's name, so the secret won't get out. But Billy's asleep. He's been asleep for a long time. Now, Miss Turner, you mind if I call you Dorothy? Billy's mother's name is Dorothy. You say you talk to Judy and Gary most of the time. Who else have they met?" "Well, they don't know it, because Tommy sounds a lot like me. You met Tommy. He's the one they can't keep the straitjacket or the handcuffs on. We are a lot alike, except I do most of the talking. He gets kind of nasty and sarcastic. Doesn't get along with people like I do." "Who else have they met?" He shrugged. "The first one Gary saw when they booked us was Danny. He was scared and confused. He doesn't know much about what's going on. He's only 14. "How old are you?" 18. She sighed and shook her head. "All right, Alan. You seem like an intelligent young man. You understand that I've got to be released from my promise. Judy and Gary have to be told what's going on so they can defend you properly. Arthur and Reagan are against it," he said. "They say people will think we're crazy. But won't it be worthwhile if you can be kept from going back to prison?" He shook his head. "It's not up to me. We've kept this secret all our lives." "Who is it up to?" "Well, everyone, really. Arthur is in charge, but the secret belongs to all of us. David told you, but it really shouldn't go any further." She tried to explain to him that it was her job as a psychologist to make these things known to his attorney, but Alan pointed out that there was no guarantee it would help. And then, with all the publicity and newspaper headlines, it would make life impossible in prison. David, whom she had come to recognize by his little boy demeanor, came out and begged her to keep her promise. She asked to speak to Arthur again, and he came out frowning. "You are persistent," he said. She argued with him, and finally she had the feeling that she was wearing him down. "I don't like arguing with a lady," he said. He leaned back with a sigh. "If you feel this is absolutely necessary, and if the others agree, I give my permission. But you must get the agreement of each one." It took hours of arguing as she explained the situation to each one who came forward, never ceasing to be amazed when a transformation occurred. On the fifth day she confronted Tommy, who was picking his nose. "So you do realize I have to tell Miss Judy." "Lady, I don't give a damn what you do. Just get off my back." Alan said, "Promise you won't tell anyone in the world except Judy, and you've got to make her promise she won't tell anyone else." "I agree," she said, "and you won't be sorry." That afternoon Dorothy Turner went directly from the prison to the public defender's office down the street and talked with Judy Stevenson. She explained the conditions Milligan had set for us. "You mean I can't tell Gary Schweikart?" "I had to give my word. I was lucky to get him to agree to let you in on it." "I'm skeptical," Judy said. Turner nodded. "Good, so was I. But I promise you, when we see your client, you are in for a surprise."